Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Good evening, everybody. It's a Thursday edition of Sports Daily. Thursdays are always crazy here on the program. Glad to be here with you. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor, Jad Chambers producing. Jam-packed show today. We've got our betting insider, Chelsea Messenger, coming up later in the hour. We have another Wichita Sports Hall of Fame induction, a voice many of you have heard right here on KFH. Coming in our second hour, we'll get to our buddy Tim Fitzgerald in just a couple of seconds here. We have lots of transfer portal news to get through as well. Hunter Dickinson should make a decision today. Kansas is in the mix, according to all reports. There's about 5 schools that probably the top remaining portal name is in on. We'll get to that. Wichita State adds another basketball player. Wichita State softball with a disappointing loss. Lots to get to, but on Thursdays this time of year, we start with K-State and our buddy Tim Fitzgerald at GoPowerCat.com.
He's got all the insight on what you want to know and maybe some of what you don't want to know. Here's K-State insider Tim Fitzgerald.
All right, let's get right to Fitz here on Sports Daily. Albracht and Castor. Fitz, Tyler Perry is in everything. I didn't realize he also played basketball. Big ad for Jerome Tang and staff.
Yeah, he's a very talented individual. But I tell you what the one thing this kid does is win championships. He did it at the junior college level. He did it with North Texas to the NIT. I think you know what that means for K-State. But seriously, this is a really solid pickup for Jerome Tang. It's just kind of the first step in this process as the portal remains open for another week, and that just means players can go into it. They don't have to make up their minds by then. So a lot of things to still move around in the portal, and Jerome Tang's convinced that other players will be coming in. But this is a good place to start, a combo guard that can create and score. And what everyone that I talked to about him says he's just a bulldog. He gets after it, and that's exactly the kind of a player Jerome Tang wants to find.
I think it's got to be a pretty impressive get for Jerome Tang, just simply because of the fact that he could have very easily followed his former coach, Grant McCasland, to Texas Tech, instead choosing to go with Jerome Tang and the Wildcats. In your mind, what does that say about Jerome Tang and what he's able to do in the transfer portal?
Well, I think players see the culture, the way the team's constructed, the way the locker room's constructed, and like that quite a bit. Keep in mind, Jareen Dowling was at North Texas for, a year when Perry was there. So there was a connection. But, yeah, you're right. To get him to come to K-State instead of go to Tech, which is going to be a really good program under Coach McCasland. But it's nice pickup. They really wanted Max Asmus to go with them. They wanted that pairing. It didn't work out. So now they're probably still shopping for more of a true point guard so that they can really, run multiple guards that can handle the ball and to not rely on one primary ball handler all the time.
Tim, I heard this last week, and I need you to address it for me because it didn't make any sense to me, but maybe I'm missing something. Are you hearing that there's rumors that Keontae Johnson could return? Have you heard anything like that? Is that even possible? I don't know what his eligibility status is.
Yeah, he's got a COVID year, and that has been mentioned in passing. He mentioned it even in his, departure letter that he still does have the ability to come back, and that date to pull out of the draft is coming up, so we'll see what happens with that. I would say the odds are strong he doesn't come back, but anytime they leave that door open, they must be thinking about it too, based on what kind of feedback they get. But I got to say this, Keontae came back to basketball, get to the league, and I think he's going to want to get that paycheck as soon as possible based on everything else that's happened in his life. But we'll see. It'd be huge if he came back. I know he loves it in Manhattan. He calls it his second home, and we'll see if they can pull that off. That'd be a huge coup.
what are the remaining needs right now in the transfer portal for Jerome Tang? Obviously, getting Perry was a good get for the Wildcat program, but in your mind, what are the holes that still need to be filled?
Yeah, he said going into this that they want a point guard that is a creator and can share the ball with others, do some of the things Marquise Noel did. They'd like to have the whole package like Marquise was, but really finding someone that can make everyone around them better is their key. And then they also want another big man that can run the floor, be more of a defensive shot blocking presence, but they don't want to give up the ability to get up and down the floor and score in the open court with their big men. So that's a hard find. Everyone would love to have that. But now I think K-State's got some, film out there to show big men to say, look what you could do at Kansas State. We'll see if they find that right guy, though. That's a hard find, but they're not going to give up on that.
What do you think right now this expectation should be next year? Last year was so much fun. I've never known how to base things up because it was such an overachievement from expectations. Like, is it fair to immediately thrust those same sorts of expectations on Jerome Tang in year 2? Or should we rein that in just a little bit? How are people feeling about that?
Well, for many years, before Uggs came to K-State and then Frank took over, the expectation was trying to get to postseason play. And Tom Asbury perverted that into including the NIT, not just the NCAA tournament. And we saw kind of a return to that at the end of the Weber era. We just want postseason play. The NIT is a great consolation if you're building and, you're trying to climb the stairs to get up to the NCAA tournament. But now that K-State's clearly past that, I think Jerome Tang's reset all the expectations at K-State that this is a tournament team every year. There's probably an expectation to get through the first round on a regular basis, but everyone knows how the tournament works, and it won't happen all the time. But when it happens more often than not, it's a problem. But I think K-Staters are realistic. They're not expecting the Elite Eight every year. They know the type of effort and the kind of good fortune at times that takes to accomplish that. But certainly being a tournament team and get through that first game into the second weekend or the first full weekend of hoops is an expectation now, I think, a pretty baseline one for K-Staters.
Fitz, we haven't had a chance to talk with you since the NFL draft. So switching gears a little bit with that, Felix Anudike-Uzomah, one of the big stories of the draft, simply because he's going home. He's staying home in Kansas City. Chiefs taking him with the 31st overall pick. And what an incredible story that is. And the fact that he's, getting a chance to stay home and play for the Chiefs. What was your reaction to that? And obviously just a tip of the cap to the way that he's played his college game.
Yeah, it's the whole draft was such a cool story for the K-State players. All of them getting to play for their childhood teams, the ones that they, grew up near or grew up rooting for. In the case of Deuce Vaughn, because his dad works for the Cowboys. But those videos of Felix at Arrowhead and stuff, man, they kind of, it's literally, as he said, a dream that has come true. Something he's thought of his whole life. He'd love to play for the Chiefs. To have it come to fruition is absolutely incredible. And I'm just so happy for Felix. I'm not sure what his immediate impact will be. I think he's going to have a small adjustment to the NFL. He's going to have to get bigger and stronger. But he's still growing, guys. That's one of the reasons why he was picked to the first round. He's a 21-year-old kid who has grown exponentially in size and mass over the last 3 years at Kansas State, and that process still hasn't stopped. So he's going to get bigger and faster and stronger. And I think Felix will greatly enjoy a life in the NFL for a while when he's only being blocked by one guy instead of being double teamed on every snap like he was at K-State. He's a really bendy guy, elastic, coming around that corner. And if he can apply that to the NFL, he's going to be a valuable weapon for Kansas City.
It's interesting when we talk about, the K-State headline guys, and there were 4 taken, and, Brenson's up in Indianapolis, which is probably a good fit. But Deuce Vaughn, I think, went later than I expected him to, but at the same time, not just because his dad's a coach there, which is really cool, or on the staff, I should say, but because that really is a good fit. They need Deuce Vaughn. I think the chances of him landing and sticking on this roster are pretty good. What did you think about Vaughn to the Cowboys?
I think he's absolutely going to make that roster, unless he has a disastrous camp in terms of showing an ability to catch and return balls, and I don't think that'll be a problem for him. This kid's so diligent. He had hardly taken any kind of punts or anything through the year because they had good returners at Kansas State that held down those jobs. But on pro day, he strapped it up and caught punts from Ty Zentner to show the scouts that he could do that too. And, I think that just says everything you need to know about Deuce Vaughn. He doesn't back down from a challenge. I think there's no doubt he's going to make this roster. We had an interesting question on our podcast that went live this morning at Go Powercat. Which of these four guys will have the longest career, the greatest impact over their career in the NFL? And I picked Deuce because I think his skills and the things he brings to an offense and special teams are going to be so valuable for a team. But with that said, he's not an every down back, so the wear and tear won't be as great. And I can see him having a long career, much like Darren Sproles did.
You mentioned Julius Brents going to the Colts, and I know at one point when we had you on the show a few weeks ago, you had mentioned that you wouldn't have been surprised to see Julius Brents be the first K-State player to be taken in the draft. Were you surprised at all? I know that it's a good fit, his hometown team with the Colts and all of that, but were you surprised that he fell into the second round, or is that kind of where you had him slotted in?
Yeah, no, that's where I had him slotted in. I realized he and Felix either or both could climb into late first round. I actually thought Brents was the more likely to do that because he's the more NFL ready guy from day one. I mean, you got a 6'3" cover corner that can lock guys down. You want that immediately. Excuse me. And Felix caught me off guard. I'll be honest. I thought he might slide into that second round. I'm just overjoyed for him that he climbed into the first round, but they're both just tremendous football players. They're both going to be successful at the league level. And I got a buddy associated with the Buccaneers, and they said Josh Hayes is probably going to come in and start at nickel. They absolutely loved that pick, and they needed a player at that spot that could swing to safety and corner when needed, and they found their guy. So I think all four of these kids went to great fits for them.
That's interesting there in Tampa. So now we look forward and we look at next year. And I wonder, I think having four players draft, and I think it was just Texas, Oklahoma, and TCU with more. But having that sort of impact in the draft, we know matters. And as we look to next year, how many guys do you think are on the roster currently for Kansas State that have a shot at this? Will Howard, we've talked about. We all think he could really elevate with his size and ability. But who else might we be missing that could be a pro in next year's draft?
Well, I already saw one of those mock drafts for next year, right on the heels of this year's draft, and Cooper Beebe was in the first round. And as long as he stays healthy this year, Cooper's a guy that can play all three interior spots. He hasn't played center at K-State, but I kind of see him maybe following Cody Whitehair and a switch to center when he gets to the league. I think Daniel Green has a shot. I think he made a smart move coming back. We were all surprised, including the coaches, that he did come back. But I think he's got a huge upside. And I think there's some young guys in this roster that will continue to mature and be NFL guys. And Cooper may not be the only lineman who gets drafted off this K-State team. That's going to be a real strength for them this season. And, let's check out what Khalif Duke does this season. He might be, kind of popping onto NFL radars pretty quickly now that he's moved back to defensive end. This is a sign of the growth of the Kansas State program under Chris Kleiman. Getting players back into the league, that getting players that can play up to that level just hasn't been something they've had a lot of as of late. And they hadn't had a first-round pick since Josh Freeman, during the Ron Prince days. So this is a positive sign for K-State football, and their recruiting now has elevated quite a bit to the point where I could see them having a number of guys each year. But boy, what TCU did was impressive. I mean, they were up there with Alabama and Georgia in terms of the number of draft picks, and it becomes pretty clear why they played for the national championship. As Jerome Tang and company say, they had some dudes, and they were not just a fortune football team, but a talented football team.
Well, it looked like, I remember watching them against Colorado. It looked like they were playing at a different speed. Like Colorado was put in like 8/10 speed or something. Like it was crazy. That first game, it was like, God, they look like they're just so fast. But that, the portal giveth, right? The portal taketh away, and it annoys us all, but the portal giveth. They had so many transfers. And I don't know how many of those guys drafted were transfers. I haven't looked into that, but that's what can happen now. And it can happen if it can happen for TCU, it can happen for anybody. And I think it adds an element to college football that's pretty exciting.
Well, this ability for this year and next year to have unlimited signees is a huge advantage for programs like Colorado. And this kind of spins off to a different topic, but I'm going on the record to say that after this season will be a coaching bloodbath when ADs realize that they got to go back to 25 scholarships after this recruiting class. And this is their last chance to do the Coach Prime method of running out a whole bad roster and bringing in a whole new roster with the transfer portal. And I think we'll see the NCAA, maybe relent a little bit and allow programs to do that like every 4 or 5 years. But for now, you got to get it done. And I think there's going to be a lot of coaches get canned just because the opportunity to use the portal to rebuild with a new coach.
Well, I think that's a pretty good segue into my next question. I saw you had some commentary about some conference realignment, Pac-12 news, all of that. What's the latest in that world?
Well, there were some conflicting reports yesterday. It was rather entertaining. Dennis Dodd reporting from the Big 12 angle that at the Big 12 meetings, ESPN officials said that, yeah, we're going to 3 conferences, with their tier 1 games, the ACC, SEC, and Big 12, and we're good with that. And then immediately the Pac-12, leaking that they're still in talks with ESPN for tier 1 games. At the end of the day, guys, if the Pac-12 had a good contract offer, they'd take it. They don't. And they're just delaying in hopes that someone will break and offer them more than they want to offer. And I don't see that happening in the current structure of the economics of college sports and all of sports rights contracts. I just don't see anyone stepping up to offer them the kind of money with the visibility that they need. They might be able to coax good enough money out of streamers, but boy, you don't want to be on that island trying to recruit. And I think the coaches know that. I saw a very interesting tweet from a media member that said he's talked to a recruit's family who was flat out told by Pac-12 coaches, we won't be in the Pac-12 by the time you're here. And this was not USC and UCLA. So I think there's just a lot going on behind the scenes, a lot of theatrics to make it all seem peachy keen and everything's fine. But at the end of the day, I just don't see the deal that will keep the conference together.
It's a wild time and a wild frontier, and probably I would imagine this summer there's more of an opportunity for everybody to lock in on it. So maybe some movement there. All right, Fitz, travel safe. Big successful draft. We'll continue to forge ahead and look at all this as we make our way to next week. Appreciate it.
Yeah, boys. Great to talk to you as always.
There goes Tim Fitzgerald. You can check out all his work at Life of Fitz on Twitter. GoPowerCat.com has you all covered on K-State. Fitz and his staff do such a great job covering the Wildcats. Glad to talk to him. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll bring in our betting insider. Thursdays are jam-packed on Sports Daily. It's Albracht and Castor, and we'll be right back.
This is your home for sports. 97.5 and 1240 KFH. The commercials are over.
Yo, I haven't got all day.
869-1240.
Time to get busy.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
All right, a little breaking news coming back on Sports Daily. Hunter Dickinson is going to be a Jayhawk. Dickinson just announced that on social media in the last couple of minutes while we were in a commercial break there. Hunter Dickinson, massive addition for Kansas. We'll get into this in the second hour and what that means for the Jayhawks and the potential there. But we knew the decision was coming today. We knew KU, I think, was one of 5, but Bill Self gets his true center. And Dickinson picks a spot where centers have had a lot of success, and probably now KU is going to walk into next season as at least a top 5 pick. We'll get into that more a little bit later in the show. Other recruiting news, Wichita State adds a player yesterday, so plenty to get through in that world. But on Thursdays around this time, we bring in our pal Chelsea Messenger here to talk a little betting.
On the line is the host of the Daily Tip and Odyssey Sports Betting Insider, Chelsea Messenger. Insider calls are presented by BetMGM. Go check out all of the latest lines today on the BetMGM app. Also, be sure to check out the Daily Tip podcast for more of Chelsea Messenger analysis. Just search BetMGM wherever you find your podcasts.
All right, we bring in Chelsea. Chelsea, I'm going to start with a little brag here, and it's not a humble brag. It's just a brag. So we love BetMGM's Call Your Shot Wednesdays where you pick a home run bet. So I would never, in normal circumstances, throw $25 on a home run bet. But when they give the bonus and everything, I do it. And I think I'm like 2 for 3 or 2 for 4 something. Josh Young with the Rangers has become my Wednesday home run auto bet, and he keeps delivering. He got me another one yesterday.
Well, congrats. Sounds like you need to be giving up some advice.
That's it. That's all I got. That's
home runs. I was just looking at the odds over at BetMGM. I wonder if they'll change because of the Hunter Dickinson stuff. But here's the thing. It feels like everybody gets big transfer news now. So I'm not sure how much of an impact it'll make because right now Kansas 16-1 to win it all, which is about what you would expect.
Isn't that crazy to think about? Like, as difficult as it is to win the NCAA tournament, that you'd only get 16-1 right now. That doesn't seem good enough for me. Winning the tournament it's the hardest title to win in sports.
I don't think this is a bet that you make right now. Like, I think you wait till later in the season. Yeah, you're not going to get as good of a number, but at least you'll have a good read on a team and how they're playing. And we see how much recent form matters when it comes to March Madness. Like, look at UConn last year. Or I guess it would be this year. So yeah, that's a wait and see bet, but I obviously wanted to run and check for you guys since that was breaking news.
Well, let's take a look at the NBA playoffs here, Chelsea. Big game tonight. Lakers at the Warriors. Of course, we saw the Lakers behind Anthony Davis and his effort winning in game one. What do you think about this game? It kind of seems like it's got to be a bounce back game for Golden State, considering that they're at home and they've got to at least get one win at home, right? I mean, what do you think about this game?
Yeah, it feels like a Golden State win. I think the question is the cover, 5.5. If we think it's another close game, I guess you would take the Lakers. But I do feel like it's an urgent game for Golden State here. Like, they're really not going to go down 2-0, one would think, right? They're going to throw the kitchen sink. We would imagine to see some kind of adjustments from Steve Kerr, because the problem was Anthony Davis absolutely torched him in the first game of this series. But I think the best bet for me is to ride one of the best players in the props world that we've seen over the past few games. Kevon Looney has been absolutely lighting it up for rebounding. Had 23 rebounds last game against the Lakers, had 21 in game 7 against the Kings. Today his line's really high. It's 13.5, but still like the over there. Here's, the last few, 23, 21, 13, 22, 14, and 20. And even if you look at the Lakers during the regular season, they gave up the 6th most rebounds to opposing centers. So it lines up. So Kevon Looney, we need you to grab some boards for us tonight. I think that's my favorite play, along with Golden State.
13.5. I'm interested in Golden State because how do you even, and it's really less about Golden State to me and more about the Lakers. Like, how do you make wagers based on Anthony Davis's perceived health? Because if he's 100%, like if he goes at full strength, the Lakers are a totally different team, and they beat Golden State at home. But, man, he was outstanding. But who knows what he's going to do tonight? I have a hard time now with Lakers games because of the Anthony Davis factor.
I would say this year, as opposed to other years, the Lakers are not nearly as reliant on their superstars, which is crazy to say. But you look at it, and LeBron James doesn't have to put his team on his back. Anthony Davis has gone missing in some of these games, and they're still winning games. So I think this is much of a complete team, as we've seen from the Lakers in a long time. So, yeah, obviously you want them out there and putting up the big numbers, but I don't think it's necessarily a death blow for the Lakers. I think it's more, are the Warriors going to hit their shots? And are we going to see more from, Klay Thompson? Klay Thompson has to be big for Steph Curry here. And so I think that it's the Warriors that probably win this one. And eventually, at the end of the day, I'm not sure if the Lakers can keep up, offensively speaking, with the Warriors. If the Warriors are bombing away from three, I don't think the Lakers are meant to play from behind. We've seen it in other games where they try to shoot threes, and they're not good shooters. They don't have that sharpshooter like most teams have. So I do like the Warriors in the series, and it's a pretty good buy low spot right now. Warriors plus 145 to win the series. Kind of root for them to lose the first game just so you get a better number. But I'm with you on the Warriors.
Speaking of Steph and the Warriors hitting shots, What's the best way to bet Steph? I know that, the over-under point total, it's got to be, through the roof. I haven't looked this morning, but, he's capable. He put up 50, in the last series. So is there a good way to go about betting him, do you think?
Yeah, you're never getting any value on Steph Curry. He ain't sneaking up on anybody. His points prop is 30.5. Maybe there is a creative way to play it to where you can do like Steph Curry 25 plus and the Warriors to win, because I do think they're kind of correlated, because one would think Steph Curry gets the full reign of the offense tonight, especially with their backs against the wall, because we knew that the pressure was kind of off in game one. I thought that, coming out of a very emotional game 7 against the Kings, that maybe we would see Steph like sit a few minutes, and not really carry the load of the team. So I think it's back to being the Steph Curry show. I think he probably does go over 30.5. Like, I'm not advising taking the under, but maybe there's a safer way to play it. Steph Curry 25 plus and the Warriors to win.
All right, Chelsea, let's switch gears a little. Anything else I know that's the game tonight, but we get you once a week here. Anything else in the NBA playoffs here that is jumping out at you, in its totality?
Man, I think the Nuggets are as good as advertised, and they don't get a ton of advertising, but from what we've seen, they look like a pretty deep team. I think for so many seasons, or like a couple of those seasons, we had the Nuggets without Jamal Murray, and people love to put the label on, well, Nikola Jokic, evaporates in the playoffs, but he had a huge game in game 2. It'll be interesting to see how that one switches once it goes back to Phoenix. I would think we see some kind of fight from the Suns, but Chris Paul being out, it's a big blow, because not only is he their floor general, he's also a veteran presence. They don't have a ton of veteran presences other than, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and it's not an especially deep team. I think that's where the Nuggets really have the edge. The Suns had to trade away all of their depth to get Kevin Durant. So I am on the Nuggets to come out of that series. The Knicks Heat one is really interesting, because I don't think a lot of people saw the Heat being in this position. If Jimmy Butler's like 80% healthy or 70% healthy, I'll be all over the Heat to win this next game at home in Miami. You cannot bet against Jimmy Butler, especially a Heat team that was like a closer away from beating the Knicks on their home floor at last game. So like the Heat in their next game as well.
How about Philly and Boston? Boston absolutely crushed the Sixers last night behind Jaylen Brown's 25 points. The new NBA MVP Joel Embiid only had 15. James Harden had 12 for the Sixers, and Boston evens the series at 1 game apiece. What do you think about the game 3 tomorrow? And is there a way that Philly can bounce back, or is this Boston series to take?
The line is saying that the Sixers are going to be a little bit better here, because right now the line's only Sixers plus 1.5, which is a pretty tight line for a game or a team that just lost like 30 or 40 points. It feels like there's a lot of reading between the lines that you kind of have to do in that last game, because I think going in, you kind of thought to yourself, oh, why is Joel Embiid even playing? But I think it's so he could kind of get his feet wet and kind of just get back into the game action, where I don't think they even expected to win that game. Like, there was not a ton of energy. And I know James Harden went 0 of 6 from the 3-point line, which is kind of an anomaly. Like, I think he'd be better than that. He's not going to shoot 50% from the 3-point line like we saw in the first game. But still, I do think that there is still a series to be played, because the Celtics are also notorious for taking their foot off the gas pedal. So I think that it's still going to be a good series. I'm not sure if I'm willing to take the Sixers plus 1.5. But it might be tighter than people would think.
All right, Chelsea, let's switch gears a little bit. Baseball, maybe even a little hockey. What else is on your mind right now, and what else are we looking at as we make our way into sort of the summer flare here?
Yeah, big for baseball for me. Not a ton of hockey. Not a hockey gal. I like it. I don't handicap it. So let's look at baseball today. I think I'm looking at the Braves today. If you look at them in this spot, which is a very rare situation, the Braves underdogs, minus 105. I need to refresh the lines, but this morning they were minus 105 against the Marlins. When the Braves are underdogs, they are 3-0 this year, a perfect 3-0. So it's a very rare situation, but still, I think it's going to show that the Braves can just hit their way out of a lot of situations. They're the second best OPS in all of baseball. We know they can hit. So sometimes it doesn't really matter the starter. And I think that's why the line is where it is. It's Luzardo for the Marlins. He's been really good against something Dodd. Dylan Dodd. That's right. He's making a spot start for Max Fried. He's had one good one and one terrible one. But those games were against St. Louis and San Diego. Those are much more potent offenses than the Marlins. The Marlins are not good offensively speaking. So, yes, the pitching matchup favors Miami, but still in this position, the Braves have been very profitable. So I'm going to be on the Braves today at an underdog price, minus 105.
How in the world, by the way, are the Braves underdogs? They beat the Marlins 14-6 last night, and they're, 21-10? I mean, come on. Like, that seems like a crazy bet.
I think it's because the lines are set based on the pitching matchups. Like, that is a heavy portion of why the lines are set where they are. And it's just Dylan Dodd. He's a young guy. Just gave up 7 earned runs to San Diego. But like I said, like, it's not the same thing going against Manny Machado and Juan Soto as it is going against this Marlins lineup. So I'll bite. Maybe it's a trap, but I do like it. Another game that I'm looking at, speaking of the Royals, I'm sure you guys are interested in this game, maybe not. It's hard to find a way to back Jordan Lyles here. He's not had like a great season. He's had a couple good ones, but still I'm going to be on the Orioles just because they're a good first 5 scoring offense. So I'm going to be on the Orioles in the first 5 minus a half. Plus the Royals have been really bad at scoring runs early on. In fact, they are the worst scoring offense in the first 5 innings of any team in all of baseball. So for that reason alone, I'll be on the Orioles in the first 5, unfortunately.
All right. And if you're on BetMGM, by the way, and you look at the baseball, it's just the column on the right if you're looking for the first 5. That's an interesting one, Chelsea. Anything else that we're missing today or need to be on as far as baseball or anything else before we let you go?
I think that's about it for me. Baseball could be overwhelming. Okay. There's a lot of stuff to choose from.
It is.
But yeah, that promotion with the home runs, I need to look into that. I think a good strategy for that is like find the worst pitcher and find somebody who matches up well. So yeah, great promotion.
Well, I'm going to, so for me on those, like, and it's been this way early in the year, and why I keep going to Josh Young partially is a lot of Wednesdays, a lot of day games. Right now they have the roof open there in Arlington. And when they open the roof, the ball carries. And when it's a day game, the ball carries. And so he generally has decent odds. That's the lock there. But yeah, just you could look at over under, right? What's the highest run total and just go find that game, which usually means the worst pitcher, and take a stab at it, right?
Yeah, the Rockies are playing a day game at home today too. Total of 12 runs. So one would think somebody's probably going to be hitting a home run.
That's an insane total. All right, Chelsea, we appreciate it. Let's do this again next week.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That's the host of the Daily Tip and Odyssey Sports Betting Insider, Chelsea Messenger. Insider calls are presented by BetMGM. Go check out all the latest lines today on the BetMGM app. All right, coming up the top of the next hour, we've got another Wichita Sports Hall of Fame induction. So let's take a break here. We'll come back. We'll dig into this Hunter Dickinson news. We've got some shocker recruiting news as well. Having fun on a Thursday. It's Albracht and Castor at Sports Daily. We'll be right back.
Okay, take it easy. We're going on the air.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
Take playoff action to the next level with BetMGM, authorized gaming partner of the NBA. Sign up now and instantly receive $100 in bonus bets when you place a $10 moneyline wager on any NBA team with bonus code JACOB100. Enjoy the NBA playoffs like never before with BetMGM's daily promotions, boosted odds specials, and parlay selection features at your fingertips for every game. Download the app today and sign up with bonus code JACOB100 to instantly get $100 in bonus bets. BetMGM and GameSense reminds you to play responsibly and offer resources to help you make appropriate choices. BetMGM.com for T's and C's, 21 plus to wager, Kansas only. New customer offer. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Rewards issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets. Bonus bets expire 7 days from issuance. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700 in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. All right, Tommy, welcome back in here. Sports Daily on a Thursday. It's been jam-packed. We've got guests on Thursday, quite a few. We'll come back to a Wichita Sports Hall of Fame induction with Paul Savage coming up at the top of the hour. But let's get to the Hunter Dickinson news here because it's breaking within the last 15 or 20 minutes. Dickinson, we knew it was down to 5 teams. It was KU, Kentucky, Maryland, Georgetown, and Nova. And Dickinson puts it out that he is going to Kansas in a long, video and everything else. And this has been a bit of a long, drawn-out process. And it's always made sense to me for Dickinson to come to KU, one, because the opportunity is there, and a tremendous opportunity for Dickinson individually. 2, he can elevate them into the conversation preseason-wise as a national title contender. And 3, Bill Self does work with centers. Look at the MVP of the NBA. Look at what Doak did. Doak should have had a natty in the year that the season was canceled. And David McCormick was honestly in that tournament itself probably the biggest reason Kansas won a natty a couple years ago. It's the perfect spot. It's always made sense. Kansas has a long history with centers, and now Hunter Dickinson has a chance and the ability to add to that long list, and I think that he will. It's a good fit on both sides, Tommy. It just makes a ton of sense.
It really does. And then, of course, you've got the elite point guard in DeJuan Harris. And, Hunter Dickinson, the last 3 seasons at Michigan, has very nearly averaged a double-double. I mean, he's been right around averaging a double-double throughout the last 3 years. I think having DeJuan Harris as his point guard, he may very well average a double-double this coming season for the Jayhawks. This absolutely elevates Kansas to be a national title contender when you've got an elite big in Hunter Dickinson coming in. It's going to slide KJ Adams to the 4, which is probably his more natural position. He was kind of playing out of position last season, and it worked. But if you've got the opportunity to get a guy like Hunter Dickinson to come and play for your program, Bill Self said as much. He said they're looking for a guy that can average 20 and 10. That's Hunter Dickinson right there. And so I think that we're going to see a bigger overhaul of the Jayhawks roster as the offseason goes on. I know that, there's only a limited amount of time left for players to enter the transfer portal. I think we're going to see probably a few more guys from the Jayhawks enter that transfer portal. It tells you what the staff thinks of the development of guys like Ernest Uday and Zuby Ejiofor, where they're not particularly comfortable, it wouldn't look like, slotting them into a starting role right away. So it looks like I wouldn't be shocked to see more turnover on that roster.
That might be a little bit unfair to them. I don't know the answer to that. I think that it honestly, if you're Kansas, you can't really approach the off seasons anymore that way. When somebody like Hunter Dickinson is out there, you have to go after them. And yeah, I think you're right. Like, it may mean Zuby Ejiofor, for example, transfers that he probably should. I mean, honestly, he probably should, right? If Uday passed him, and I think we all probably feel like he did. One of them, though, and we've already seen Clemens transfer out, so you hope it's not both, but it could be. You never know. But if you're Kansas, I mean, you take this shot. Kansas's goal is to win a national championship every year, and so it's just it's a side effect of that. But I mean, it's the way you've got to do business, and Dickinson is I don't want to just blindly call him the best big in the country next year because I don't know that for certain, but he's going to be in the conversation as the best center in college basketball next year. And if Kansas has an opportunity to go bring in the best center in college basketball next year, you go bring in the best center in college basketball. And that's, that's going to be the way this works now. And that's okay, because the reality is, let's just say it's Zuby Ejiofor. Again, no indication that anything, but let's just say it's him because he appears to be third on the depth chart at that position. If he now is able to go somewhere else where there is a better opportunity, isn't that the best thing for Zuby Ejiofor too? Like, it may be
100%.
a little bit, it may be a little bit uneasy, but for a guy who didn't quite take that year one leap like you might have thought he could, now maybe he just goes somewhere else to prove it. And that's not a bad thing either. But yeah, when you've got, 3 of Wando and Adams and now Dickinson in there, I mean, I don't really care what else they put in. That's going to be a team that is a contender. They went and got shooters, right?
Yeah. Well, and they also signed the sharpshooter Nick Timberlake from Towson. They've got Arterio Morris, who's the Texas transfer they just signed.
Yep.
Like, they're looking at rebuilding
And
this
some
roster.
Oh, totally.
Pretty much, from the ground up at this point. Kyle Cuff has entered the portal. I think we're going to see more players do that.
If Timberlake can shoot the way we think he can, because that's really what that starting lineup would lack, they're going to be fine. We still don't know, by the way, on McCullough, right? McCullough, there's a chance could come back. Now you've got a starting lineup. Now you got a starting lineup.
Coming back.
Because you got one of the best defenders in the country. Bill Self said it. Bill Self's not saying that unless there's a chance. McCullough may get through
like
the
to have
draft.
him back. I think it's pretty unlikely we see Kevin.
Do you
I know that they'll welcome him back with open arms. I just don't
Sure,
think that's going to happen.
It's all about whether the NBA loves Kevin McCullough, and I'm not sure that they will. So, if, again, that's where the NIL comes in. Is your best financial opportunity at Kansas? I think that's not outrageous. I really don't. I think there's a decent chance that could be the case. 869-1240. We'll come back. We'll bring in Paul Savage. We'll do a Wichita Sports Hall of Fame. We'll get into Wichita State's day yesterday, both from the recruiting aspect in men's basketball and a very disappointing day for the softball team. We'll talk about all that. Hour number 2, Sports Daily, Albracht and Castor. The IHOP hotline open, 869-1240. We'll be right back.
Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily here on a Thursday edition. Glad to be with you here. It's Jacob Albracht. It's Tommy Castor. It's Chad Chambers producing. And now it's Paul Savage coming in as we induct the newest member of the Wichita Sports Hall of Fame. Happy to do that. The IHOP hotline always open, 869-1240. Paul, take it away. Who have we got today?
Well, thank you, Jacob. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to introduce KFH's own Dennis Higgins. Now, Dennis is one of those special guys. He's been a long-time Wichita resident, and he is this year's recipient of the Mal Elliott Sports Media Inductee, Jacob. And, of course, Mal Elliott was the longtime sports editor at the Wichita Eagle. And like I say, as a longtime Wichita, Dennis has been broadcasting for 30-plus years. Can you believe that? Doesn't look like he's a day over 25. But he's been play-by-play for the Wichita Wranglers from 95 to 99. He's been the play announcer for the Tulsa Oilers since 2008 and has done Butler County football and basketball since 2005. The guy's been around a lot, and I'm really proud of this little accolade. 2017, Jacob, Dennis received the MSMA Oklahoma Sportscaster of the Year award. How about that? You know, it's a real privilege to be able to introduce a friend of mine. I call him a friend. I'd like to introduce Dennis Higgins as the newest inductee into the Wichita Sports Hall of Fame. Jacob, take it.
All right, Dennis, welcome in. Glad to have you. And I think that it's a long and spiraling career here. What has this been like in all over the years doing all the is it all the same? Is there anything that has really stood out to you over this now Hall of Fame career?
Well, first of all, good morning, guys, and thank you very much, Paul, for the introduction. And I will say this: you guys are making me feel really old.
There you go.
How long I've been in this business. But thank you very much for having me on. And it's been real pleasure. It's interesting, how I got back to Wichita in the first place. I'm a native Californian, grew up in Southern California. And I got into broadcasting in 1991. My first job was in Helena, Montana, doing the short season Helena Brewers radio broadcast. And I was just thrilled at the opportunity. And in 1994, I was doing a game in Eugene, Oregon, another short season there in the Northwest League. And the visiting broadcaster said, "Hey, have you heard about the opening they have at AA Wichita in the Texas League?" And I hadn't. And I thought, well, you know what? Maybe I'll throw my hat in the ring and see if I can get that job. I'd never worked a long season job before, always 4 seasons of short season, 70-game schedules. So I called back to Wichita. I'm sure I'm one of several hundred that called back there. And Steve Schad, the general manager at the time, he answered the phone and he said, "Yeah, we do have an opening here. Just send a resume and a tape." And it was a pretty short conversation. So I did. I sent my resume. And back then it was cassette tapes you would send for audition tapes. And I got word eventually that I was a finalist and to stand by and they would let me know. Well, I eventually got hired, but I found out when I got to Wichita that it was an interesting way to get there because I really wasn't the first choice. I was told they had a committee of 5 people to listen to the audition tapes and kind of narrow it down to 2 or 3 or whatever the finalists were. And I guess I was a finalist with Matt Devlin, a young guy from Southern California who has been very successful in his career. And he's now the TV voice of the Toronto Raptors, the NBA team. And before that, he was the longtime voice of the Memphis Grizzlies in the NBA. But I was told that on the listening committee, there was like 5 members, I think. And I don't know what the vote was, if it was 3-2 or 4-1, but Matt won. And so I guess before they settled the decision, Diane Overaker, who had worked for a long, long time, just a sweet lady, and she'd worked at the NBC tournament. And she said, "Well, hold on a second here." And she said, "I really like this Dennis Higgins guy. I like he's kind of an old traditional broadcaster. I like him." And I guess Diane had enough sway to convince the other people to go against their vote for Matt Devlin. So that's how I ended up in Wichita. It's
Wow.
interesting to me Yeah, interesting to me how life has strange turns like that. I mean, I obviously knew where Wichita was and where Kansas was, but to think that I would spend, basically the rest of my life in Wichita, that's my home now. It's interesting how it all came about.
Isn't that something? And the fascinating thing about your career here at KFH, and we'll get to that here in just a little bit, but the fascinating thing about your career is that you spent time with the San Francisco Giants. I mean, in a way, you kind of got your start with the Giants.
Well, actually, Paul, that would have been my 10th year in broadcasting.
Oh, there you go.
And that opportunity came about when I was going to grad school at San Francisco State. I got an internship at KNBR Radio in San Francisco, the flagship station for the Giants, the Warriors, a 50,000 watt clear channel station that reached the entire West Coast and even an affiliate in Hawaii. And I was an intern there, and that turned into a producer job for the #1 rated sports talk show, in the country at the time. Was Ralph Barbieri's Sports Phone 68. And I was in way over my head at that big station. I didn't know any way to operate all the equipment there in the control room. And there were times I hung up, accidentally on Joe Montana as a guest. Anyway, I plowed my way through it. And through my connections there, Bob Agnew, the program director, he followed my career in the minors. I would always send him back cassette tapes. And he would say, Higgins, you're doing pretty good, but you got started too late. You're too old. I should say that I was 31 years old before I got into radio. The previous 8 years, I had driven a Budweiser delivery truck in Sacramento. And so anyway, eventually it was Bob Agnew who called me up and said, Higgins, we'd like to hire you to be on the San Francisco Giants broadcast teams. And I said, well, Mr. Agnew, you thought I was too old. And I won't repeat what he said to me then. That was really a big part of me getting in the job at San Francisco.
That's fantastic. Dennis Higgins joining us, newest member of the Wichita Sports Hall of Fame. So happy to have you on board with us here. As people know you well around here now, Dennis. Do you have I'm always curious at this is, early in all of this, I did a ton of play-by-play. Do you have a favorite sport to call?
I get asked that all the time because I do baseball, football, basketball, and I do football and basketball for Butler Community College, and I really enjoy that job a lot. It kind of seems to me whatever's in season at that time is what I really enjoy. I will say this, baseball is probably the one, since I've done it the longest and grew up really wanting to be a baseball radio play-by-play. That's always been my passion. Never wanted to be on TV, just wanted to do baseball play-by-play on the radio. Probably, I'm told by some folks, it's probably the best sport that I do. I find football and basketball extremely humbling because the pace of the game and it can be kind of chaotic at times. Baseball has a certain flow to it, although, if you got the bases loaded and the ball's hit to the wall and you got 3 runners scoring a play at the plate, whatever, it can be kind of confusing or complicated. But I don't know. I just really enjoy all of them. To be honest with you, when they're in season, I just enjoy what I'm doing.
Every sports announcer has a unique situation on a call that they were making. In some game, there was some play, there was some player, there was something going on that you'll never forget because it was so unusual. What's that one play for Dennis Higgins?
Oh, Paul, you're putting me on the spot here. 28 years of doing this. I mean, there's been some bizarre plays. And I always tell our listeners here in Tulsa, that's the beauty of baseball. It really is the uniqueness of it. You can go to the ballpark every day as I do, and there's always going to be something that you're going to see for the first time. There's so many things that have happened while I've been doing the games. Nothing specifically comes to me right now. We had like an exciting walk-off win yesterday. The Drillers beat San Antonio in the 9th inning with 2-run rally. Those are always fun to do. We've got a very special player, Johnny DeLuca, our leadoff batter. He's hit 4 leadoff home runs to games this year. And he won the game with a single off the wall in left field. And we had a big crowd yesterday, over 6,000 people. Those are always really exciting. I was participated in 2 national championship games with the Butler Grizzlies football team. Those were really exciting. We're out in Salt Lake City for both of those. Won the one game over snow in double overtime on a bizarre play where Butler blocked a field goal, and for some reason, one of the snow players tried to fall on it in the end zone. He fumbled it. We recovered it for a win. We had to wait about 5 minutes for the officials to work through that one to decide if it really counted, and we won a national championship. And then this past season has been extremely thrilling for me with the Butler men's basketball team. Coach Kyle Fisher and the Grizzlies, 26-9 season, first time to the NJCAA National Tournament in Hutch there since 2015. They won their first Region 6 championship since 2010. And that was just super exciting. Great group of guys, and we had a lot of thrilling wins.
Dennis, this is a little inside baseball, pun intended, but I want to ask you, I've wondered about this, like calling the game now on the radio with the rules changes in baseball. Has that impacted anything? I would imagine the pace has picked up slightly. Do you even notice it when you're on a call?
Don't really notice it, but although yesterday I must say, and it kind of bothered me because we had a batter to plate with a 3-2 count, and he was called out for a pitch clock violation. And my comment at the time on the radio was, this is not baseball, folks. This is not baseball. To have a guy called out without a pitch being even thrown, and it has sped up the games. I think it's 32 minutes shorter now on average, the minor league baseball game. So that's nice to see. I think it's unfortunate that it had to come to rules being inserted to speed up the game. The players, that's on the players, stepping out all the time, adjusting their elbow pads and their gloves and all that, and taking practice swings. I like the fact the pace is picked up, but I don't like the fact that a guy gets called out on a third strike without even swinging the bat or taking a pitch.
Well, I can certainly buy that. And I've got a quick question for you, and then I'm going to run to a couple of guys in our studio who want to say hi to you, Dennis, if that's all right with you. But I would like to ask you this. Name me 1, 2, maybe 3 guys that you've made calls on over the years that turned out to be something big, whether it's Butler, whether it's Tulsa, who are those 2 or 3 guys that turned out to be those guys, those big guys at the majors or in NFL or wherever the case might be? Who are those 3 or 4 guys?
To this day, the best minor league player I ever watched in person was Carlos Beltran.
Yeah.
He played for the 98 Wichita Wranglers. The guy had it all, possibly a Hall of Fame member at some point, Major League Baseball, but he could hit from both sides of the plate. There was a couple of games where he homered from both sides of the plate, had a Roberto Clemente arm in right field, ran like a deer. Again, to this day, the best minor league player I ever watched in person. A guy named Barry Bonds.
Oh, yeah.
His career turned out pretty good. One of the memories I do have with the Giants was a Sunday night baseball game. The Giants were at Dodger Stadium, where, of course, I pretty much grew up around Dodger Stadium as a kid and in high school and college. And on a Sunday night baseball against Darren Dreifer, obviously the former Shocker, Barry Bonds hit a home run to the pavilion in right field. And with that home run, he surpassed Lou Gehrig on the all-time home run list. And I got the call on that. So that's something that always will stick with me. Being at Dodger Stadium, again, where I went to my first Dodger game back in 1963, the second year of the ballpark. And to be able to sit there in the booth next to Vin Scully, next door booth and call a home run like that was a special moment. But Carlos Beltran, and then there's been numerous players at Butler who have passed through. DeMarcus Lawrence was just an outstanding defensive end for Butler before he went to Boise State. Now he's with the Cowboys. Michael Gallup. Just a lot of great players at Butler and throughout the professional, minor league baseball. We had half the Dodgers roster in the year they won the World Series a few years ago. More than half the roster passed through Tulsa within the previous 2 or 3 years. So there's been a lot of great players along the way. I've been very fortunate.
You know what? You've kind of inspired me with a quick question before I get to our guests that want to say hi to you. But you brought up Vin Scully. Oh my gosh, Vin Scully. What a great broadcaster. And broadcast, I don't know, was it 60 years, something like that? 50 years?
60 plus, yeah.
60 plus years. That's what I thought. Just amazing. Who are those 2 maybe broadcasters that influenced you? Who are those 2 guys that just made you say, I love this sport, I love what I do? Who are those 2 guys?
Well, undoubtedly, Vin Scully's the number one guy. I mean,
all right, I got you.
Growing up in Southern California in Oxnard, never really had any choice. I had 2 older brothers very early on. I was probably 3, 4, 5 years old. And my oldest brother, Mike, every night with a transistor radio in the bedroom that we had bunk beds, he'd have Vin Scully on and Jerry Doggett. Listen to those broadcasts, no question about it. That inspired me to get me started. It was a special moment for me when I got to meet Vin in San Francisco before a game, had a great conversation with him. And he's just inspired me in so many different ways, not necessarily even his play-by-play, just his faith, and just a wonderful man. And I was very fortunate to meet him. But yeah, that's the main motivation there. Grew up, listening to Chick Hearn, who was the voice of the LA Lakers, and Bob Miller, the LA Kings. I was a big King fan growing up, fabulous announcer. And then Dick Enberg was, when I was growing up in high school, he was doing the Angels broadcast with Don Drysdale. So I was very fortunate to grow up listening to those guys, and all of them really profoundly influenced me.
Wow. That's tremendous. That is just tremendous. Well, we got a couple of guys right here in the studio right now that want to say hi to you and congratulate you on your induction to the Wichita Sports Hall of Fame. None other than our own Jad Chambers is sitting right here in the studio. Jad, take the floor if you don't mind.
Dennis, congratulations. How are you doing today? Good?
Thanks, Jad. I appreciate it. Listen, Jad and I go way, way back. He
Yep.
has engineered, studio coordinated many, many of my games. And let me tell you, that's a tough job, and he's always done a fabulous job.
Well, Dennis, it's been really my honor to work with a bunch of guys around here that are super professional, especially back then when I was doing those. And I was a little bit green, but to work with guys as professional as you, Steve McIntosh and Mike Kennedy, really helped me out, especially early on. And so thank you for that. You guys make doing what I do fairly easy.
Well, I have a really good studio coordinator here in Tulsa, a young man by the name of Lucas Ragland, and they're just invaluable what those folks do. Going to break on time, getting highlights cut and played in the post-game show. Along those lines, I don't want to forget about Phil Hildebrand. He's been the studio coordinator for the Butler Grizzlies games for years. And I've never, he's just absolutely wonderful, insightful, texts me scores, has all the highlights ready in the post-game show. So that position is so valuable. Until somebody does play-by-play, you don't realize how important the people are back in the studio during the game.
Wow. Well said. One more guy here wants to say hello to you and congratulate you. Our own Tony Dusing, who is the program director here for Odyssey. Tony is our boss, but he's also a friend to all of us. Now, I don't want to ruin your hard-nosed reputation, Tony, but Dennis is something special. I know you wanted to tell him congratulations as well.
Yeah, congratulations, Dennis. When Savage said that he was going to do this, I thought, oh, wow, this is great. And no one more well-deserved than yourself, right. Dennis, you've done a lot for the community. I met Dennis. I met you, when you came in to do the Wrangler games in the late 90s.
95.
And it's when I first heard Dennis, and of course to this day, Dennis is one of the best play-by-play guys I've heard on radio. And Vin Scully, I remember Dennis. I remember back in, what was it? I think it was the late 80s. We were running World Series baseball games from CBS Radio, and I wasn't very familiar with Vin Scully because he's a West Coast guy, but they used him, and I thought, man, that guy's really good.
Yeah.
Who is that? Dennis like, that's Vin Scully, and he told me all about him. But Dennis, he does it's an exciting game when you listen to Dennis do, whether it's Butler or Tulsa. I've heard some of the games there through broadcasts, or when he did the Wranglers, and he makes it exciting, tells some great stories, and especially you mentioned baseball, because baseball can get. We play the Royals games here, and sometimes the game can be slow, and it's up to the broadcaster to really make it exciting. We really wanted to make it matter to the listener, not be boring, and Dennis does that. He's very honest, and one of the things I noticed with Dennis is anybody that meets Dennis will notice how honest and a nice guy he is. That really comes across, and he's just such a friendly person. And he's a great friend to me. And I remember, Dennis, one time I was so lucky you had invited me to come out the first year the San Francisco Giants opened their stadium. We went out there to visit, and never been to Southern California. And I remember visiting Dennis, and he took me into the players' locker room, which is rare.
Cool.
You can't. Yeah. You just don't do that. We just took a little tour, real quick, nothing major. And I noticed over in the corner there is like this fancy lazy boy sitting back over there. And I thought, wow, what's that? That's a certain area there. He said, that's Barry Bonds' area. You don't mess with him over there. Remember that, Dennis?
Oh yeah, he had his own section in the clubhouse, with that lazy boy chair there. Yeah, he'd take snoozes, during batting practice. He'd walk in there and go to sleep. Tony, they asked me earlier in the interview, are there any special, unique moments in my career? And I should have remembered. It was almost 24 years ago to the day in May where you and I went up to the 21st floor to the roof of the Hyatt Regency across the Arkansas River to broadcast a Wranglers game, and the estimated home plate was 1,000 feet away.
Yeah,
I had binoculars up there, and you were with me engineering the game, and it was an incredible experience. It was a day game, and fortunately for me, I'm very fair-skinned, and 24 years later, I still have not recovered from the sunburn I got that day.
Oh, my.
But what a memorable day that was, so to call a game up there, and got a little national exposure. Remember John Madden Sports Minute did a little feature on that. At one point, I gave a traffic update on Kellogg during the game, and that was a very special day, and there's still photographs from that, and that was really fun to do that. So that was one unique, special moment for my career that I certainly remember.
Yes, I do remember that, the Hyatt. That was really fun to do that.
Well, the time has come, Tony and Jad and Jacob. Don't run off yet, because I know you want to say congratulations, but the time has come for us to officially induct you, if you don't mind, Dennis. And at this time, you've been nominated and you've been elected into the Wichita Sports Hall of Fame, and you retain all the rights pertaining thereto. And I just want to say congratulations. You are now officially inducted in the Wichita Sports Hall of Fame. Dennis, congratulations, my friend.
Yeah.
Paul, thank you very much. And I know you played a big role in this, Paul, so I really appreciate it very much. I'm honored. Did not expect this. Again, back in 94, never figured my life would be so involved in Wichita, Kansas. I love it. And to borrow a phrase from Lou Gehrig, I tell you what, doing both the Drillers and Butler Community College, I feel like the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. And thank you, Tony, and thank you, Jad, for your words. And Jacob, thank you for this chance to induct Dennis Higgins. This is a big guy, man. I'm telling you, he's an important guy. Dennis, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Congratulations, Dennis.
Congratulations, Dennis.
Fantastic stuff there. Congratulations indeed. And you can continue to hear Dennis with Butler as we make our way through. And, if the Wind Surge are ever playing Tulsa, maybe you check it out that way. So we appreciate it. That's another induction. We'll get you a couple more next week. Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Jad. We're going to come back. We've got college recruiting news from the Wichita State standpoint to talk about as well. We'll do that. On our way out, let's give something away here, Jad. Let's give away, let's do some vouchers for the Wichita Wind Surge. Good for any home game. We'll give away a 4-pack. You pick the game, courtesy of Sports Daily and KFH. First caller, 869-1240 to the IHOP hotline. Tommy jumps back in. We'll talk a little basketball recruiting when we come back. right, welcome back, everybody. It is Sports Daily here on KFH. Glad to be with you here. Hey, you can enter for your chance to win a trip to see Guns N' Roses at a U.S. stop of your choice on their 2023 World Tour, including round-trip airfare, a 2-night hotel stay, a pair of tickets, and a $200 gift card. Just go to kfhradio.com to enter for the chance to win that national contest. Get tickets now at livenation.com. Welcome back in. Our congratulations to Dennis Higgins on his Wichita Sports Hall of Fame induction. Let's move on to some more college basketball recruiting news. We mentioned Hunter Dickinson. I want to make sure we have enough time to talk about another addition for the Shocker basketball program. Ronnie DeGray III out of Mizzou comes in. A quick bio check on DeGray here. First year at UMass, just under 9 points, just under 5 rebounds a game. About those same numbers then after he transferred to Mizzou. Last year he was hurt, had a smaller role with the new staff, it would appear, but the injury really jumps forward. A knee injury, I believe, according to one of the local publications there in Columbia. But a connection certainly to Hollander, the assistant coach when he transferred in, you would imagine. That connection exists, and now he comes to Wichita State. Now, the interesting thing here about this transfer, fellas, Tommy, is he's transferred once, right, from UMass to Mizzou. Now we have to wonder, sort of like we did with Colby Rogers last year, if Wichita State's going to be able to get a waiver on him. I don't know all the details with the new rule. I would imagine the injury would enhance his chances of getting the waiver, although I'm not 100% sure on that. But he has transferred once, so we'll see. Taylor Eldridge did a little bit of a deeper dive and calls him an undersized power forward, which is a position of need certainly for Wichita State. But it sort of continues this trend, Tommy, of, talented guys that were at other big-time programs or, had big opportunities and are just either looking for the next step up in the case of Jacob Germany or a bigger role for a talented guy, as we've seen with Beverly now and DeGray, but a theme developing, I think, for who Paul Mills is targeting here.
It sounds like Wichita State and the staff is pretty optimistic that Gray will get that waiver to play for Wichita State next season. I think based off of what you just said, based off of that injury that he had that limited him. But, I think you're right as far as what, his motivation is coming to a program like Wichita State. To me, he seems like the kind of guy that can maybe fill that role that James Rojas had a little bit last season for the Shockers, that kind of mixed between a 3 and a 4, although, I think he is a little bit, undersized to play a true power forward position. But I think that gives him a little bit of versatility. He can shoot. There were 9 games last season for Mizzou where he shot 60% from 3. In 9 different games last season for the Tigers. And so I think that shows that he can step back and hit the 3. That's an area where Wichita State desperately needed improvement from a year ago. And so I'm not sure that he's going to be, the guy that is always going to be taking the 3. But when the situation warrants, he definitely has that capability of doing that. So I overall like this signing for Wichita State. I'm curious to see how he is able to come back from the injury that he had that ended his season at Mizzou. But all in all, I think, getting a new opportunity under Paul Mills and seeing how he can be developed with Paul Mills and this staff at Wichita State makes me excited for this signing.
Right.
Paul, when we look at this group coming together for Paul Mills in year one, it is a talent level that becomes clear. A lot of these guys, and DeGray was a 3-star out of high school, but you're seeing sort of it's not even a prototype. And the reality is, too, we haven't talked to these guys, so we don't know personality, which we know was important to Paul Mills. But there is a talent level that's being targeted, whether, there were incredible high school players, right, or, college players that we've seen good things for. We haven't even mentioned Bijan Cortez coming in from Oklahoma. But what do you think of the overall talent level being targeted right now by Paul Mills in this first year?
Well, we've got to give a lot of credit to Paul Mills, and we've got to give him the benefit of the doubt in his first year of recruiting. I mean, we haven't seen him coach yet. We haven't seen what he wants to really do with the guys that he has, how he wants to coach them, what kind of style of basketball they want to play. Now, we we have inklings of what will happen because, I mean, he's been the head coach of other college programs. So, I mean, we get a feel for that. But right now, we have to give the benefit of the doubt on anybody he recruits or anything that he's going to do on the court because we just don't know. He gets the chance to do whatever he wants to do. So I look at just, overall at the talent he's going after, and it looks pretty darn good to me. Now, that's just me, without studying it, hands over fist like most analysts would do. But I'm just going to say, I really have confidence in this basketball staff. At this point, I have all the confidence in the world. Whatever they're doing seems to be okay with me. If they think Ronnie DeGray fits into this situation, then I'm all for it. I'm for anybody he is recruiting right now because he's allowed the benefit of the doubt on anything like this. But listen, the guy's successful. He's going to be fine. He's going to know what he's doing. So that's kind of where I am. I don't think any of us can really doubt what he's doing, what his game plan is until we see this team on the floor, can we?
No, and don't you think, because we've talked, Tommy, sometimes to the ire of a section of the fan base about expectations in year one. And, nobody at the school wants to talk about that, right? It's an uncomfortable conversation, but I think it's a realistic one, for fans and for generating the buzz back. But, as the dust has settled here and we look at this and at this roster coming together, and they're probably not done. We're still waiting on Kenny Poto. We're still, waiting to see if there are any other additions, big splashes to be made. And, as we see, and I'll just use it as an example because we talked about it earlier. Hunter Dickinson goes to Kansas. Who then needs to leave Kansas? Who chooses to leave Kansas? You almost want to leave some roster flexibility for those types of situations too. So we're certainly not done yet. We also have the NBA draft process to get through. But I think as we look at it, and I don't know, what are we, 2 months, not even 2 months into this? I am pleased, very much so, with the job done so far by Paul Mills and staff. I think he put a good staff together. And I think this collection of talent, at least, is appealing when you think about the American next year and where the Shockers need to be. I think, top two is not probably, after we saw Florida Atlantic do what they did and North Texas do what they did, even top three probably, but top four, top five probably needs to be an expectation. And I think absolutely this team needs to achieve that or more. I think they could achieve more. And I think there's enough talent here that they're going to slide into about that spot.
Listen, I'm cautiously optimistic right now. I'm not willing to come out, and say that I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because we just don't know. The jury is still out. We don't know exactly how, these new players are going to gel together and if it's going to work or not. I'm cautiously optimistic in the regard of that you've got players that we're looking for new areas and new opportunities where they can thrive. Harlan Beverly was one of those guys that was highly recruited, really wasn't able to break through at Miami. Is he somebody that can come in and break through Wichita State? Time will tell. Jacob Germany is maybe the only one with the pedigree that transferred in that actually was able to break through at UTSA. But I know that, he's going to want to take his game to the next level. DeGray, Cortez, these guys coming in, they all have played roles, albeit small ones, at their respective schools, but it's going to be the impetus for them and for Paul Mills and the staff to have them break through even bigger at Wichita State. So I know that they've got, a lot of them have the skills and the attributes to be able to be top tier talent in the American. It's just, I think the jury is still out on whether or not they will actually be able to take that next step or not.
Well, come on, guys. Come on. You got to get on board with this thing. Right now, I think that the minimum for this coaching staff, Coach Mills and his guys and his players, is an AAC championship. I'm not saying national championship, but you got to set the standards. This is Wichita State. This is the roundhouse. This is the house that Dave Stallworth built. This is a special place to play basketball. You've got to go into the mindset, if you're Coach Mills and his staff, and you got to go into this season with the mindset as a basketball player on this team, trying to make this roster, trying to make the starting five, that you're going to be great. Because at Wichita State, fellas, that's what you expect. We don't expect, they're going to go out and try. They're going to go out and we're going to get a good effort. We're going to see what they're like. No, Coach Mills is bringing guys into Wichita State. As far as I'm concerned, AAC championship minimum, advance to the big dance, see what you can do. I'm not going to say win a national championship, but I'm going to say right now, the expectations of this staff is to win the AAC, and anything less is not acceptable.
Well, I mean, their expectation, of course, they want to win. They're all wired that way. I think we need to talk, though, about reasonable expectations. The expectations got to be high. We established that. Wichita State tells us that, right, by moving on from Isaac. Well, they told us that because they moved on from Isaac Brown.
Right.
So we know at least that's not good enough, right? So it's higher than that, and that's been okay. And 1 year was really good, so we know the expectation's high. It's just like but sometimes things need time to develop. Sometimes Kansas State, they don't, and they work, and I think that's where we get into this. And but what my point on all this is, Tommy, that I think the collection of talent is there to be like, just remember last year, right? At this time in the recruiting process, we didn't know anything about the roster. The players coming in were largely unknown, just like really, really unknown. These guys we can all find. You can see it, I guess. And like, I haven't seen Ronnie DeGray play, but you can see it when you look at the numbers, when you read things about them written by local media wherever they were. Like, and even when you go back to their high school, recruiting levels, which I think matter more in basketball than they do, say, for football to some degree. But you can see, like, okay, these are all talented guys. And for a lot of these guys, like Beverly and DeGray, jump off the page at me as far as these guys were pretty effective in big-time conferences as freshmen. And then from whatever reason, whatever the circumstances, right, that growth didn't happen. But, man, what a perfect opportunity at Wichita State where there's all these opportunities. And let's not forget, too, Rogers comes back. High expectations for him, right? Quincy Ballard is raw, but you like it. And Germany is a guy who you would expect big production on based on what we've seen from him. So it's not like they're, taking just these ultimate swings where they need everybody to pan out. No, I think it looks like a deep and, here, let me just make a long story short, and I apologize for getting long-winded there. I think the talent floor for Wichita State is clearly rising. That's what it feels like to me, Tommy. And I don't know that I may be looking at that too quickly, but we can all see what these guys were as recruits. And I feel like that floor is coming up.
The strategy is clear, though, right? I mean, the strategy from Paul Mills and his staff has been to identify and recruit and bring in players that were highly recruited, went to another university, were unable to carve out a significant role. And that's outside of Jacob Germany. He's the only one that was able to do that. Everyone else, reserve minutes, averaging a few points a game, not really able to, jump in and whatever program, whether it was Miami or Oklahoma or now Missouri, coming in and looking for a better and bigger opportunity to play and to make an impact at Wichita State. That's the strategy for Paul Mills. I think that's a similar strategy that, a lot of other schools around the size and the stature of Wichita State are implementing right now. They're other than Max Asmus, and I still to this day don't exactly
Tommy, it's
know
what Kansas State did.
Right.
It's what Kansas State outside of Keontae Johnson, right? Like, he was the headliner,
Exactly.
but before that, it's the same thing.
Other than Max Asmus, who, again, we don't exactly know how real that, whole pursuit of Asmus was for Wichita State outside of the obvious Paul Mills connection. That's been the strategy, finding guys that hopefully can thrive in the environment that Paul Mills is creating at Wichita State. Do I think that all of them, Cortez and Beverly and now DeGray, do I think all of them are going to hit at high levels? I don't know. I mean, the jury's still out. I think that's a hard thing to predict, that all of them are going to hit right away. But I think it's pretty likely that at least one or two of them will. And I don't think Paul Mills is done. So it's going to be really interesting to see how these new players that they weren't able to carve out large roles at their previous schools, how they're going to be able to do that at Wichita State.
Well, it sounds like we all agree that the talent's going to be pretty good in this class. Now it's up to this coaching staff to coach them up.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt about it. And by the way, they're not done. Again, the recruiting cycle is not finished. There will be fallout from some of these top names coming through. And then you wonder if if Wichita State can swoop in those scenarios and find maybe an even higher level of talent from guys. It's all out there on the table, but I think everyone's pretty confident in the way the staff is putting this roster together.
Right.
Okay, let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll touch back on the Hunter Dickinson news. We'll mention Wichita State softball and get into the last remaining items on this jam-packed, busy Thursday edition at Sports Daily. It's Albracht, it's Castor, it's Savage. Chad Chambers producing. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily on KFH. Jacob Albracht, Paul Savage, Tommy Castor, Chad Chambers. Wild and crazy show today. Our thanks to Tim Fitzgerald and Chelsea Messenger for joining us in hour number 1. Congrats to Dennis Higgins on joining the Wichita Sports Hall of Fame here in hour number 2. Just a couple more quick minutes on the headline of the day. If you missed it, Hunter Dickinson is a Jayhawk. He makes his decision this morning within the last hour, choosing KU over a number of schools. We'll see if there's roster fallout here. But Hunter Dickinson becomes a centerpiece now for KU. And, I think we just look at it right now in the roster. And again, it may not be done yet either. But Tommy, should the expectation now for KU, as we talk about expectations, be a national championship this year?
100%. You don't go out and get Hunter Dickinson, a guy that is, was projected as the number 1 transfer in the portal this season, without those expectations of going out and winning a national championship. And Bill Self has been incredibly active in the portal, getting Nick Timberlake, getting Arterio Morris, and now getting Hunter Dickinson. I don't think he's done. I think we're going to see a massive overhaul of this roster. I think we're going to see potentially guys like Zuby Ejiofor out the door. Kyle Cuff has already entered the transfer portal. I don't know if Ernest Uday will return. You never know. There's a couple of incoming freshmen that could potentially reopen up their recruitment and leave the University of Kansas. So we'll see what happens as it all pans out. I think the only 3 guys that you feel, really confident in right now as far as sticking with the program, and actually I say 3, it might even just be 2. The only 2 guys you feel super confident in that they're not going anywhere that are returning, DeJuan Harris and KJ Adams. Other than that, all bets are off.
Yeah, Paul, I think I think I agree with that. In the transfers that have come in, are you there with this team now, Paul, as a team we had a lot of questions about going in? Bill Self and staff have done a great job. Natty or bust for KU next year?
This is KU, guys. This is KU. We expect them to compete for a national championship every year. Players come, players go. In the portal, it's even gotten worse. We see that happen all the time. If it wasn't a player going into the portal or coming out of the portal, he was going into the NBA early or whatever and leaving the program early. This is the University of Kansas, guys. Our expectations are national championship competition on every season. So, yeah, I'm with you guys on this. I believe that Hunter Dickinson might be a huge part of that. Sure makes me think that their chances of being really, really good go up with this young man, and I appreciate that. But something, I'm sort of the mindset with everybody, and that is this is the University of Kansas. There's only about 4 or 5 blue bloods left in America anymore. Maybe not even 5 anymore. It might be 3 really true blue bloods. And we expect those 2 or 3, maybe 4 blue bloods to compete for a national championship every year. This is nothing different for the University of Kansas. They will compete. Bill Self will have them play well, and Bill Self will have good basketball players. That is the nature of things at the University of Kansas.
Yeah, it is, and it's good to see Bill Self there too. By the way, he's in he's in the video, looking, looking like he's just ready to hit the ground running, and that's going to stick with him, the ultimate competitor. So, yeah, it's been a big headline story today. We'll continue to follow it. I'm sure there will be fallout tomorrow to follow as well. Just all kinds of good stuff happening for KU basketball, Wichita State basketball, and K-State basketball. Look, in the last couple of days, we've had nice additions for all 3 programs. That's what we want, right? Let's get that portal moving in the right direction for us here for the teams that we follow on a daily basis. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll tell you what's on tap the rest of the day. Thanks for being here with us, everybody, on the air and on our video stream. We'll wrap it up, a Thursday edition of Sports Daily right after this. All right, that's going to do it, everybody. Thanks for being here on this jam-packed edition. All our guests on the IHOP hotline, 869-1240. You can go back and listen to those interviews on the Odyssey app. Interesting day of programming today because we've got day baseball. You've got Jim Rome from 11 to 1, and then the Royals-Orioles take over here on KFH. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Thanks, Tim Fitzgerald. Thanks, Chelsea Messenger. Thanks, Dennis Higgins, for joining us. For Paul Savage, for Tommy Castor, for Jad Chambers, I'm Jacob Albracht. Friday edition coming up tomorrow. We'll see you then.